Wall Street breaks a 3-day losing streak. Stocks rise as data from the Fed's preferred inflation gauge throws no surprises. Stocks in the Asia-Pacific trade mixed, while the GIFT Nifty is indicating a positive start for the Indian market. Cryptos continue to surge. Bitcoin hit $64,000, rallying over 40% in February. Crude prices, meanwhile, remain largely flat around $83 a barrel. India's GDP growth in Q3 accelerates 8.4%, beating estimates. Government revises the FY24 growth estimate higher to 7.6% and revises the FY22 growth rate higher, while FY23 growth rate is revised lower. Union Cabinet clears 3 semiconductor proposals. Tatas will join hands with Taiwan's PSMC to set up a 91,000 crore rupee fabrication plant in Gujarat. Tatas will also build an assembly and test facility in Assam at cost of 27,000 crore rupees. CG Power's joint venture with a Japanese and a Thai company to set up an assembly facility in Gujarat also cleared. After being honoured with an honorary knighthood, Sunil Mittal says he sees average revenue per user hitting 300 rupees by the end of FY25, but rules out any hike in 5G costs for customers, adds that Airtel will partner with content providers but not get into content themselves. Good morning in the Mumbai News Centre. I'm Sonal Bhutra. You're watching Power Breakfast. Those are the top headlines that we are tracking for you this Friday morning. But first up, as we always do, let's take a look at the global markets and specifically Asian markets, because after 3 days of losses, US markets did see some green, and that is translating into the cues for Asian markets as well. For the Taiwanese index, it is up around 31 points as we speak. The Hang Seng, though, that one is seeing some cuts. That one is down around 91 points as we speak, and it's quite a mixed picture as far as the Asian markets are concerned today. The GIFT Nifty, that will come up for you on the screen, and that one is indicating the implied open is around 40 points in the green. And again, it's a fresh day of the new series, so we'll have to see which way things go. So this one is indicating the open at the 22,200 mark for our own markets. From Asia to the United States now, where Wall Street ended Thursday's trading session higher, with the Dow Jones surging 47 points, the S&P surging over 26 points, popping to a record close, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite closed at its first record since 2021 with gains of over 140 points. Thursday's session caps off February trading in a fourth straight positive month for Wall Street. The Nasdaq led the pack with a 6.12% gain. The S&P climbed 5.17%, while the Dow added 2.2%. The core PCE data for the month of January showed that inflation remains stubbornly higher than the Fed's 2% target, but did not exceed street forecasts. Core PCE increased 0.4% for the month and 2.8% on a YoY basis, and in line with estimates. Headline PCE, which includes food and energy, increased 0.3% month-on-month and 2.4% on a yearly basis, which was bang in line with estimates. In fact, staying with the PCE print, let's listen into what former Fed Governor Randy Kroszner had to say on the inflation trajectory in the US, for the outlook for rates and a lot more.
Certainly, we've seen the inflation come down from its peak quite rapidly, but to continue to move down is going to be tough, particularly because wages are not moving down nearly as rapidly. They'd been around 4% when inflation was much higher. They continue to be around 4%. And that's one of the largest costs that firms face, and particularly firms focusing on services rather than manufacturing. So it's going to be a slow decline. The Fed's not going to move too quickly. June is possible, but this is one of the reasons why they want to see more data to see whether the wages start to come down, whether they start to see services prices come down.
Okay, all right, that's the global market action. But how will these overnight cues impact our own markets? We have our research team joining in to tell you just that. What's the trade setup looking like, the stocks that are likely to be in the news, and the action from the F&O space as well. Vivek is joining us first up with all the market cues we need to watch out for today. Vivek, good morning.
Well, good morning. We managed to end the February series on a strong note. In fact, overnight cues too very, very supportive. Both the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq have closed at fresh record highs. In fact, the Nasdaq closed above its previous high that was set in 2021. S&P 500 too went ahead and bested the close that it saw just last week. So on the back of that, some positive news flow coming in there. Also remember, the core PCE data softer along expected lines, so that added to the positive sentiment. Now coming to oil prices edged slightly lower on Thursday. Brent futures settled closer to the $83.50 a barrel mark. But the story yesterday was, the kind of last hour surge that we saw in our own markets, largely led by the MSCI rejig that you saw, almost $1 billion of inflows that came in yesterday due to the MSCI rejig. So that is something that helped and aided the market recover from the day's lowest point. What aided the recovery? Banks were one pack that recovered almost 700 points from the day's lowest point. The FMCG pack, after a while, outperformed. So Tata Consumer, Britannia, Nestle were amongst the top gainers. But one particular pack, that will continue to remain in focus today is the entire hospital space. Worries have now emerged about price capping as far as hospitals are concerned. After that, you did see significant selling pressure amongst all of the hospital names. Apollo Hospital, Max, Fortis, all of these were amongst key drags yesterday. Now, which are the key events that markets will be tracking? Remember, last evening's GDP data, very, very strong. So there is some positive news flow coming in over there. Along with that, any kind of update that comes in terms of inflow curves in the entire SMID, that is a small and mid cap index schemes. This is something that the market is keenly anticipating. Yesterday, that led to a little bit of worries in terms of incremental inflows into the small and mid cap schemes. So that is something that the market is looking for. The GIFT Nifty is indicating a positive start for our own markets.
Okay, yes, it is. Thank you so much, Vivek, for joining us with all those updates. Let's go across to Upasana now. She has a list of all the stocks that will be in focus today. Hey, Upasana.
Hey, good morning. Well, government has incentivized chip makers on semiconductor sector and has approved establishment of 3 units with a total outlay of almost 76,000 crores. Well, CG Power will be in focus as the company in partnership with Renaissance Electronics will make an investment of 7,600 crores to set up semiconductor unit in India. Well, next up is Swing Pharma. It announces a merger with Cohance Life Sciences, and the shareholders of Cohance will receive 11 shares of the merged company for 295 shares of Cohance. Next up is ICICI Bank. The bank is acquired for the stake in ICICI Lombard worth almost 431 crores, and ICICI Lombard is now the subsidiary of the bank, hence that will be in focus. Next up is Biocon. It has signed a settlement and license agreement with Jessen to commercialize its BMAB 1200 mg, a proposed biosimilar to Stellar in US markets. The US FDA has also conducted an inspection at company's unit between Feb 20th to Feb 28th and has issued 4 observations. That's the reason Biocon will be in focus today. Next up is Tips Industries. The Warner Music has announced its expanded agreement with Tips Industries, hence this stock will be in focus. And Charlotte Hotels is also what we are looking at. It has executed a deed of admission of partners with respect to acquisition of Ayushi and Poonam Estates LLP for 315 crores. Well, next up is Landmark Cars. It has received letter of intent from MG Motors India for opening dealership in Ujjain. And lastly, L&T will also be in focus as it commissions first indigenously built hydrogen electrolyzer at Hazira, Gujarat.
Okay, all right. Upasana, thank you so much for that list. Finally, Nigel is joining in with all the cues from the FNO space this morning. Hey, Nigel.
Well, morning, Sonali. Yesterday was a good end to the trading session. In fact, both the Nifty and the Nifty Bank, they popped up, particularly in the second half of trade. 2 factors played out. One was the MSCI flows, and the second factor was the expiry-related factor. Rollers on the Nifty, well, pretty much in line with what we have seen, around 80%. That's the average that we're seeing for the last 3 series. The Nifty open interest, though, the futures open interest, is a little bit higher than what we saw at the start of the February series. Positioning, well, the FIs, they are net short, but not to the quantum that we have seen, in the earlier series. And remember, being net short actually has been a blessing in disguise. So let's see how it goes. As of now, it is at around 65%. The total quantum is nearly half, though, of what we saw in the February series. Let's wind this down with the key levels to track. On the Nifty, the 20 DMA becomes very, very important. The upside, 22,300 will be important, and the Nifty Bank as well. The crucial levels come up for you on the screen. Back to you.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Nigel. So that is the trade setup for the day. We'll do one thing. We'll slip into a short break. When we return, India's GDP growth in the third quarter accelerates 8.4%, shattering estimates. We'll get you a roundup on all the macro data on the other side. Welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast. When the big Q that we got overnight was GDP growth in India, it accelerated 8.4% in the third quarter, shattering estimates. For context, CNBC TV 18 poll was expecting Q3 growth rate at 6.7%. In fact, the government has also hiked the FY24 growth estimates to 7.6% compared to 7.3% earlier. Lata Venkatesh is joining in with her analysis of the GDP data. Lata, it was a surprise.
Oh, yes, it's a spectacular number, no taking away. The Q3 GDP coming in at 8.4 versus our poll of 6.7%. The but comes in because the GVA, the gross value added, which is really the actual measure of the extent to which the economy grew, that came in line at 6.5%. I mean, the divergence between the GVA and the GDP is almost eye-popping. Now, what is the relation? GDP equals GVA plus taxes minus subsidies. So looks like taxes did very well and subsidies were very low. That's why the divergence. So the higher than expected GDP growth is largely accounted for by a 32% rise year on year in taxes minus subsidies, or what you call net indirect taxes. So net, the Q3 growth itself is not mind-blowing, but the overall number is. However, there are other positives which are definitely mind-blowing. In Q3, for instance, manufacture is 11.6% growth. Power, gas, water and other utilities is 9%. Construction, 9.5%. All excellent numbers. The worry in Q3 is only that personal final consumption grew by just 3%. And government consumption actually dipped by 3%. The heavy lifting is being done only by capital formation, which is up 10.6%. So basically, the economy ran on investment, not on consumption. I must mention the other positives that came along. The big upside revision to Q1 of the current year, that has gone up from 7.8 to 8.2. And Q2 has been upped from 7.6 to 8.1, which is why the full year GDP number has also been upped to 7.6. From the earlier estimate of 7.6. 7.6 is a damn good number. The nominal GDP, that is GDP in current price terms, has not been upped. It has been lowered. So what the fiscal deficit is counted as a percentage of nominal GDP, the government actually gets to spend a little less because the fiscal deficit is now has to be 5.9% of 293 lakh crore, not 300 lakh crore as the budget had originally estimated. Just a word. Core sector numbers for January have come in very weak at 3.6. But again, taxes have come in very high. 16.5% growth in, gross tax revenue. So it looks like the divergence between GDP and GVA will continue.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Lata, for explaining that to us. So that is what explains that big surge that we've seen in the GDP growth this time. Let's also listen into what Anand Nageswaran, the Chief Economic Advisor, had to say on Indian economy's growth trajectory.
We believe that given the prospects of a normal monsoon, good Rabi sowing, prospects for rural income growth, and pickup in manufacturing and mining sector growth, and a pickup in bank credit growth, which has been unfolding. So overall, the Indian economy ticks many boxes in the right way, continuing to grow at around 7%. And now, if there are question marks that are coming, they're coming from the external world.
Okay, all right. With that, let's move on. Fiscal deficit for the first 10 months of FY24 touched 11 lakh crore rupees. This accounts for over 63% of the revised annual target. The government's fiscal deficit has been estimated at 17.35 lakh crores or 5.8% of the GDP. Okay, those are some important numbers, but with that, we'll take a short break now. When we return, Bharti Airtel Sunil Mittal says the average revenue per user could hit 300 rupees by the end of FY25. We'll get you more details from that conversation on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Well, it's time to get you an exclusive now. Bharti Airtel Sunil Mittal spoke to Shireen Bhan and said he's eyeing average revenue per user to hit 300 rupees by the end of FY25, but he ruled out any hike in 5G tariff for customers just yet. Take a listen.
He uses the word tariff repair, and I think that's the right word to say because hike always looks pretty aggressive. 300 rupees, as you know, was mentioned many years back. A lot of inflation has taken place in the last 5-7 years, where electricity prices are up, employee costs are up. Almost every touch point is up in terms of costs. Yet we are still talking about 300. In fact, that number should look more like 400. But I recognize that it's very difficult in our industry to take the ARPUs up. So next pit stop is 250, then hopefully 300. And if you ask me, I hope it happens within the coming financial year. I think people are not going to pay you anything extra for 5G unless you're going to do industrial applications.
Okay, that's a big exclusive. Of course, we'll keep getting you more excerpts of this conversation. But let's move on. Anand Ambani Radhika Merchant's pre-wedding event begins in Jamnagar. Over 1,000 guests will attend the 3-day festivities at the Reliance Greens complex in Jamnagar. The small airport in the city is seeing a bevy of global celebrities, including Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg, the Meta founder that is, Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates, amongst many of the other global leaders descending for the gala event. Bollywood too is making its presence felt. Shah Rukh Khan is in Jamnagar with his family to take part in the celebrations. Ranbir Kapoor and Alia Bhatt have flown in as well. Salman Khan had reached Jamnagar last night itself. Actor Arjun Kapoor has reached as well. The celebration will also feature performances from global music icon Rihanna. The other high-profile guests attending the pre-wedding celebration include Uddhav Thackeray and his family. We have Bollywood couple Deepika Padukone and Ranveer Singh. They'll also be a part of the star-studded pre-wedding festivities. Okay, all right. With that, we'll do one thing. We'll take your leave on this edition of Power Breakfast, but do stay tuned. Bazaar Morning Call comes up next.